This is a very old product, but it's actually a very cool product as well. This is a Silverstone power supply. It's only a 450 watt power supply. So how is this relevant, Linus? Well, the reason it's relevant is this is their Nightjar 450 watt 0 decibel power supply. This is a fanless power supply. It produces 0 noise. It's an 80 plus power supply, and it better be if it's not going to have a fan in it, because the less efficiency, the more waste heat output there is. So if you have an efficient power supply, you're far more likely to be able to build it without an active fan taking away heat. It has single PCI Express 8-pin and dual PCIe 6-pin support for high-end GPUs. All right, that's pretty cool. 450 watts of continuous output with 500 watt peak, although you better not use this outside of its spec for very long, because, I mean, it is fanless. It doesn't have a way to just sort of ramp up the fan to make up for any additional heat output. There is nothing on the back of the box. Oh, here we go. Here's the overall layout. Wow, this thing is actually really heavy. I'm like having a hard time holding it up while I talk about it. Okay, so this is a single 12-volt rail at 35 amps or 40 amps peak, and so that can provide up to 420 watts of the total 450 watts that this power supply is rated for. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down here. I have never actually seen this power supply before, although I've been curious about it and I've wanted to see it for a little while. So we are having a voyage of discovery today, that's for sure. So the first thing we'll find inside the box is the Silverstone okay, some kind of manual. Okay, so this tells you a little bit about your power supply. It tells you the physical characteristics and whatever. Okay, that seems really pointless. That's okay. Then we will find we'll find another document that is completely unlabeled. Aha, this is the manual. So this shows you how to install the power supply, how to connect it to all of the relevant parts of your computer. That's pretty useful, actually. Thanks, guys. Okay, next we will find a little accessory box that has a power cable in it. Okay, so there's, wow, that's actually a pretty nice, pretty beefy, thick power cable. It's, if I could just find it, yeah, I can't find what it's rated for, but it doesn't really matter. And then next inside we will find more stuff. Oh, you don't normally have a whole lot that comes with a power supply, but it looks like they've gone the whole 9 yards here, and they have included they've included some plastic zip ties, as well as some screws for mounting it. They've also included some Velcro tie straps for managing your cables. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, I have to confess, I am completely stumped. I have no idea what this is for. It's some kind of bracket. Okay, so they've included both thumb screws and regular screws, depending on how you want to mount it in your case. Maybe your case doesn't have room for thumb screws at the back. Maybe there's something blocking it. So they've given you all the different options there, which is very cool. Okay. And then we're pretty much left with the power supply itself, I suspect. So that has a very unique looking finish to it. Let me just get this open here and I'll get the plastic off it. I mean, this is the kind of power supply that is perfect for a media build or for a small form factor build, because the reality of it is most computers are not using more than 450 watts, 400 watts of power, even gaming machines, and a big part of the reason that many users use overpowered power supplies for their systems is because they want to keep the noise down, because an overpowered power supply isn't going to have the fan working as hard, so it won't be as loud. So, I mean, if you just go with a 450 watt power supply in the first place that doesn't have a fan, well then win-win, right? I guess the one disadvantage is this power supply is quite expensive. So why don't we have a look at the unit itself and then we'll move on to the cables. Man, this thing is heavy. Okay, so there we go. See, we've got pretty much another outline of what we saw on the front. So the rails on the side. This thing is all about the ventilation holes. So you can see this side of the power supply is completely honeycomb mesh. The top is a thick aluminum heatsink that is also vented, so you can actually see right down into the power supply. But if you look at it from the side, this whole structure is all heatsink. Okay, so this is screwed on with a couple of screws here. Around to the other side of the power supply, we have more honeycomb mesh. At the back of the power supply, we have more honeycomb mesh, and then we have our power switch as well as our plug Okay, so then at the front of the power supply we have, guess what? More honeycomb mesh. So this is all about as much passive airflow as possible. And I want you to try and look inside there. You see those huge heat sinks right here and right here. That is what is going to be cooling this power supply. So those appear to be connected to the top, and this is going to be the majority of the cooling surface of the power supply. So if you are using a unit like this, or this one in particular, you want to make sure that you're providing at least a little bit of airflow to it where it's doing most of its cooling. You don't want to jam this in a little box with like 0 fans, because then you're just asking for trouble. So in terms of connectors on this power supply, we have a 20 plus 4-pin power connector. Okay, so that plugs into your motherboard. That's terrific. You would pretty much expect any power supply to have that. In terms of PCI Express connectors, we have, oh wow, they've given you a whole lot of options for PCI Express connectors. This is, oh no, they haven't, never mind. This is a 4 plus 4-pin power connector, so that's for your CPU. Okay, I'm just going to adjust this a little bit so that I can hold it more comfortably. There you go, so that can come apart if you're using just a 4-pin motherboard, which the odds are pretty good you would be doing if you're using like a media-oriented motherboard or a small form factor motherboard. Then you have a 6 plus 2-pin and another 6-pin. So this, I mean, I really like these cables, the ones that are like this, because the reality of it is most people are using one GPU. So if you have one GPU, even if it has 2 6-pin connectors or an 8 plus 6-pin connector, you run just one wire to it. Perfect. Love that. Okay, then in terms of SATA connectors, you've got a whole lot of them. So imagine that. Imagine like a media-oriented power supply needing lots of hard drives. Wow, go figure. So there you go. You got 6 SATA connections, 3 on each one of these cables. I want to give you sort of some perspective for the length here. So this is the power supply itself. So these are quite long. So pretty much whatever case you're using, you're going to be able to reach your hard drives just fine. And then you have a bunch more Molex connectors. So we have 2 more cables. Again, here's your power supply, here's the length of the cable, it's very long. So 1, 2, 3 on each of those, and then 2 floppy connectors at either end. Thank you for checking out my extremely heavy unboxing of the Silverstone Nightjar 450 watt power supply.